Hi there, I'm Jo, photographer, ex-urban explorer, texture maker, digital artist and Photoshop addict. I love to experiment and create art in Photoshop, with perhaps some questionable decisions along the way. Expect tutorials, sometimes weird art, and a lot of curiosity and controlled digital chaos. Well, mostly controlled. So grab your pen tool and let's go create some art. Hi there, and welcome to my channel. For my first tutorial, I thought it would be fun to start with a simple demonstration of how I use textures in my artwork to create some quick and easy painterly effects. We'll start off with how to layer textures onto an image and briefly cover blending modes and masking to create a simple but effective work of art. Then I will demonstrate one of my favourite ways to push that painted effect even further, and that is by using the Photoshop Art History Brush tool. For those of you who are coming here having bought one of my texture sets, firstly, a massive thank you. And I hope you find this short tutorial useful to help you get the most from your textures. Down below in the description, I will include a link for you to download a free sample pack so you can follow along with the tutorial if you so wish, or have fun experimenting and applying them to your own images. The free pack contains 4 sample textures from my latest Simply Still texture pack, as well as the starting images for this tutorial. I'll also include 4 of my favourite custom art history brushes for you to download, experiment and have fun with. So let's get started. Okay, so I've opened up my simple still life photograph. This was one I just took in my living room. And I'm now going to add some textures just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to navigate to my folder, and you can see here this is everything that's going to be included in the downloads pack. So we have some textures and obviously the 2 images that we're going to be working on in this tutorial. So I think I'm going to start with this texture here, number 13, and I'm just going to drag it across and drop it on top of my image. Now by default, Photoshop is going to set it to transform mode, so I can easily now just resize the texture to fit my image. If you click the little link icon at the top here, the image will be scaled in proportion, all 4 sides together. But I'm just going to uncheck that and pull out the handles to the edge here because I want to retain all of the details of that texture. Just make sure that's covering over the image completely and press the little check mark. Now, if by any chance when you drag your image over it doesn't automatically go into transform mode, all you need to do is press Command or Control T on your keyboard to enter transform mode. Okay, so now we have our texture sitting nicely on top of the image. All I need to do now is just cycle through the blend modes to start blending it to the photograph underneath. So on the top of your layers panel, you have a little drop down box here where it says normal, and we can now just cycle through all of the different blending modes to find something we like the look of. And generally, as a starting point, I more often than not will use either multiply, overlay or soft light, but there are some exceptions, as you'll see later on. Now in this image, I don't really like the backdrop colour that I used when I photographed the flowers, so I think what I'm going to do is actually use my texture to colour tone the image and create something a little bit more antique looking. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way down to colour. What that's done is taken the colour of the texture and overlaid it onto the image. Now it's a little bit uneven, but I quite like that because it's going to add to the slightly painterly artistic effect. But what you could also do, if you didn't like this difference in colour, if I set it back to normal, what you can do is go up to Filter, blur and average, and it's just going to take the average colour tone of that image, and then you can apply it as a flat colour there. So now we've got a lovely sepia toned image without having to go into colour adjustments in Photoshop at all. So this is where textures can be really versatile. They can do quite a bit of the heavy lifting for you. So now I've adjusted the colour, I'm now going to add some texture. So if I go back into this folder, and I think I'm going to choose still 1 for this one. And again, the same scenario. Now, while I'm in transform mode, I can also change the orientation of this texture. So if I go to edit, transform, there are lots of options here. I can rotate it, change the orientation. What I can also do, if I right click on my mouse, we bring up this menu again, but I can flip horizontal or flip vertical. So I can move the texture around and see where I'd like those different edge effects to fall. You don't have to be stuck with the orientation of the texture as it is. So I don't know, I think something like that. So again, I'm then going to stretch it to cover the entire image. And now again, I'm going to play with the blending modes. And I think soft light looks really nice. Just have a look at hard light. That could be quite useful as well. So I'm going to go soft light, but I think what I'm going to do, I want to make that texture stand out even more along the edges. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Command or Control J, depending on whether you're on Windows or a Mac. Now I don't want that affecting all of the image. As you can see where I've duplicated it now, it's kind of obliterating the subject of the photograph a little bit too much. There are 2 ways I can mask this off. I can just drop down to the layers panel here and click the mask icon, and that's going to add a layer mask. Now the layer mask is white, so in order to punch through that, we're going to have to paint in black. So if my foreground colour on my colour picker isn't black, all I need to do is press the X on my keyboard and that will change it. So you can change back and forward by pressing the X key. So I've now switched to black. I'm using a soft round brush, and I'm going to make my brush quite a bit bigger. And again, as a shortcut, if you just press the bracket keys on your keyboard, you can make your brush bigger or smaller by increments. So that's another good shortcut to learn. Now I don't want 100% opacity because it's going to look far too harsh. So I'm just going to change that to 10%. So we can very subtly blend that away. And again, you can either just click the arrow to bring up the opacity slider, or if you know the opacity percentage that you want, you just type it in on your keyboard. Now for 10%, you just type 1. Okay, so I've got my soft round brush, and I'm now just going to very slowly paint this texture away. And it's best to do this gradually so that you can really control how much of the image comes through. Do it nicely, slowly, try and avoid any harsh edges. Now I'm using a Wacom Cintiq graphics tablet, but you can do this just as easily with a mouse. So as you can see, I'm just taking my time, going up into the texture to remove it from various places where I think it's just a little bit too strong. But we've still got that base texture underneath to tie everything together. And I'll just take a little bit more off the flowers because I want those to be really detailed. Not quite as important on the books or the foreground there. But something like that. Now if you wanted it just around the edge, another way you could approach it, if I delete this layer mask, another thing we could do is to create an inverted layer mask. So to do that, you hold down your Alt or Option key, go back down to the bottom of your layers panel and click the layer mask there, holding down the Alt or Option. And this time it's going to create a black inverted layer mask. So what that does, that hides the texture completely until you paint through on this mask with white. So it's the opposite of what we did before. So again, I need to change my color. So I'm going to press X on the keyboard to switch to white. And again, I'm on 10% opacity. I might actually put it up a little bit more, probably go to 20%. So I'm just going to type in 2 on my keyboard. And I'm just going to add some around the edge. So I'm just boosting that lovely texture that we've got around the outside. And this way I'm avoiding those flowers. I'm not getting those too hidden beneath the texture. So something like that. Now obviously I'm just doing this very roughly for tutorial purposes. I'm sure you could do something really good with your own images, but it's just to give you an idea of the kind of approach I take. Now once I've laid my textures on, I'll then just do some final adjustments. Now these will vary depending on the image. Now I think I'd like to add some contrast to bring out the detail in the flowers a little bit more. So I'm going to go to my adjustments panel. Now I've got my Photoshop set out in a very specific way. That is the beauty of Photoshop, is that you can arrange all of the tools to suit your method of working. And I'll possibly do a short tutorial on how to adjust your workspace and get it set up at a later date. But for now, if you can't see your adjustments panel, just simply go up to Window and check next to Adjustments, and that will make it visible for you. But mine is down here on this tab, so I'm just going to click my adjustments panel. And I think the first thing I'll do is add a levels adjustment. And on this, I'm just going to select the mid-tone slider and pull it slightly to the right, just to darken that slightly. Maybe darken the shadows a little bit. I don't want to go too far. And I might just bring the highlights up a bit as well. So I'm just going to move that slider back to the left. And now we can preview it. So there's the before and there's the after. I think that looks a little bit better. It's really helping to bring out the detail in the texture as well. And then perhaps if I wanted to push it a little bit further, I could go back to my adjustments panel again and choose something like, oh, I don't know really, clarity and dehaze. That can be quite good to play with. You want to go a little bit steady on this one though, because it can get very crispy very quickly if you're not careful. But we'll go somewhere like that, 3 or 4, maybe a little bit of dehaze, not too much. Again, there's the before, there's the after, very, very subtle. So that's just a couple of the techniques I would use when adding textures to an image. If I group these all in a folder by just clicking and selecting them all and pressing Command or Control G on my keyboard, just to create a group, so make them all nice and tidy and out the way. And then I can simply click to turn them on and off so you can see the difference. So this is the starting image and this is the one we ended up with. And literally that was just 3 textures, well no, actually 2 textures, 1 duplicated, and a couple of adjustments. I'm going to finish by quickly demonstrating another quick and easy way to add painterly effects to your photos, and we're going to do that by using the Art History brush. Before we start working with the Art History brush tool, however, there are a couple of things we need to do. Firstly, we need to check that our starting image is in 8-bit mode. This tool simply won't work in 16-bit. So to check that, we just go up to Image, Mode, and we just check that it is on 8 bits per channel. I would then do any adjustments I needed to the image before painting. For example, if I wanted to change the colours or the lighting, this is the point at which I do it. I'm not going to bother with that today because we're just going to do a very quick tutorial here. The next thing I need to do is to duplicate the background layer. So I'm just going to press Command or Control J. This is just simply so that we have the background image preserved. If we need to go back, we can. And then lastly, we need to take a snapshot of the image this far. This tells the Art History tool which state of the image to paint from. If you've ever used the History brush tool in Photoshop, it's a similar idea. So I'm just going to go up to History, and again, if you can't see History in your panel anywhere, just go up to Window and click History. But this is the History panel, and I'm just going to click the little camera icon here to take a snapshot, which is going to freeze the image in its current state. And you'll see it appears in the History tab as Snapshot 1. So I'm going to select that, very important that I click that snapshot, and you'll see the little brush icon appear next to it. So this is what we're going to be drawing from to paint our image. Okay, so it's now time to install the brushes. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I've included some of my favourite Art History brushes for you to download in the free sample pack. So to install them, all we need to do is to open the brushes panel, and you'll see right on the right hand side here there's a little hamburger menu. If you click that and scroll down to Import Brushes, it'll then prompt you to navigate to the folder from where you can install your brushes. So I've opened up again my sampler pack. Just going to click this one here, the JJP Messy Art History brushes, and click Open. And now they are installed in our Brushes tab, ready to use. So if I expand the folder, so there are 4 brushes here, each will give you a slightly different effect. Now the first thing I want to do is just get rid of this harsh dividing line between the backdrop and the table that this vase of flowers is sitting on. So I'm going to start with the first brush. Now with the Art History brush, you have up at the top here a little drop down menu called Style, so you can change to different effects here. We're going to start with Dab, but I will demonstrate in a moment how the different things will look. Now at the moment I think it's quite a large size, but I think that's actually quite good, and you'll see as I'm dabbing it's already making quite a fun painterly effect. And I might go even bigger on this background actually, really sort of mess it up. Now don't worry if you go over edges because we can change that in a moment. At the moment I'm going quite large, I'm just creating a bit of variation in that background. And again I'm using a graphics tablet, but you can do this with a mouse. So instantly you can see that's already disrupted it and it's already made it look quite artistic. Now if I wanted to bring back some of that detail where I've gone a little bit too far, because this is quite a big brush, all I need to do is use my bracket keys again to reduce the size of my brush and then go in and paint over the top again. And you see, make it even smaller. Now I'm bringing back some of that detail where I've gone a little bit too far over the edge. There's a lot of back and forth with this technique, lots of painting over and over again. But because I've got this on a separate layer, I can mask off anything that I don't like. So I'm just going to keep going over here. Now, as I said, there are different options at the top for the style. So let's have a look. If I change it to tight short, it's going to give me a much different effect. It's almost like a squiggly line kind of effect. Let's make it a lot smaller. So this can give you quite an interesting effect. In actual fact, it makes quite a good pattern on the vase there. I might even keep that. Or we could try, what else could we try? This is just sheer experimenting. Let's have a look at tight curl. What does that do? Oh, does what it says on the tin. Look at that. So you can see how it can make some very interesting effects. I'm going to go back to dab, make my brush a bit bigger, and I'm just going to bring that back a bit. Paint that back out. Okay. Now I might change to another brush. I've got Art History Brush 4. That's another very painterly brush. So again, we're on dab. Let's see what that does. That's sort of smoothing the edges out a bit more. Again, if I make that smaller, even smaller still, there we go. That's sort of tidying up that edge a bit. It got a little bit crazy, but again, I'm not too worried because I can mask this off afterwards. This is all about play and experimentation at this point. So that's kind of fun. I'm quite liking how that's all working now. So then what I can do is go in and start painting on the flowers. And again, I would probably make my brush a fair bit smaller. And just start painting along the edges maybe. I don't necessarily want to go over all of the details of the flowers, but just to make a bit of variation. Now obviously if you wanted to, you could go really abstract with this. I'm going to keep it fairly detailed just for the purposes of this tutorial. But I'll show you on one of the other brushes in a moment the sort of thing you can do. And I am literally just dabbing. So there's no great difficulty with this. Again, you could do this very easily with a mouse. I really like the effect that's giving there on those flowers. Really nice. Okay. It's actually quite satisfying and fun to do. You can put some music on and really go to town. But that's good as a starting point. Now these other two brushes I've included, brush number 2 is interesting. This was taken from a lightning brush, but it's quite fun to use for leaves, I'm finding. So if I make it a bit smaller, you'll see what I mean. If I just dab, it's kind of giving me some sort of curly foliage kind of effect. Again, if I don't like it, I can switch back to another brush and paint away, paint back in where I didn't like it. Make that even smaller. Well, I hope you can see what I'm doing. So it's very much backwards and forwards here. Again, this is making it quite abstract. And then finally, brush number 3 is a foliage brush that I've converted into an art history brush. So I'm just going to tap with that at various points. And again, you can see that's making some little abstract leaves and the blossoms. And again, if I didn't like that, I could change back to a normal brush and paint it away. Now I'm not so keen on it here, so again I'm just going to tap that back, knock it back a bit. So I hope you can see how this is working anyway. This is really fun to experiment with. Again, just knock it back a little bit there. I'm liking that better. Now there are lots of different history brushes online that you can probably find, or you can make your own. There are tutorials on YouTube if you wish to do that yourself. But like I say, I've just included these ones in the downloads pack so you can get a feel for the art history brush tool for yourself. It's really good fun to play with. Okay, so now I'm just going to change back to my normal brush. So I just need to press B on the keyboard. B for brush, nice and simple. And I'm going to close down the brushes panel. So I'm back to my default soft brush. Now, as you can see, now we've got the layer with the painting on and the original image underneath. So now if I wanted to tone some of that down a little bit, all I need to do is add a layer mask. Change my brush to black, and again, low opacity. I'm going to go in and just tap some of the details back in very slowly. I want to leave some of the abstract left, so I'm going to make that even smaller. And again, I'm just doing this quickly for the sake of a tutorial. I'll bring that tulip back a little bit more. Quite like that over there, so I'm probably just going to leave that quite abstract actually. I'm going to just paint back that vase a little bit. So again, because I'm on low opacity, I can be really controlled about this and maintain as much of the painterly effect as I want. Just slowly, slowly. And if I go too far, I just press X on the keyboard to paint some of that effect back in. But I'm actually taking away, so there we go. I just want to just come back and redefine the edge of the vase a little bit. We went a little bit crazy there. There we go. And possibly bring back some of the detail in the middle of the vase as well. So I'm going to make my brush a bit bigger, and I'm going to just tap. There we go. That's good there, I think. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is to finish off is add some more textures. So again, we're going to open up our sample folder, and this time I'm going to use number 15, I think. And this is a nice grungy canvas texture, and I'm going to set that, I think, probably to soft light. I don't want it too harsh. That looks nice. Don't really like how it's affecting the colour though, but that's an easy fix. All I need to do is go up to Image, Adjustments, and Black and White. So it's taken away all of the colour from the texture, which is perfect. So I'm just now going to click OK. So there's the before, there's the after. So you can see how painterly that looks now. I'm probably not going to adjust that too much. I might just take some of it out from the middle a little bit. So I'm going to add a layer mask, and again 10%. I'm just going to tap it away from perhaps these middle flowers, because I feel like I'm losing a bit too much detail there. These I'm not so worried about because they're very abstract anyway. Something like that. That's quite fun. Bring that back there. Lovely. And I think I'll try another texture. Let's have a look. Let's try number 14. Bring that one over. There we go. We're going to drag it across. And I really like the vignetting effect almost down the bottom here. So I'm going to keep it in this orientation. And I'm going to set that to soft light. Oh yes, that looks really nice. But I'm going to back it up a little bit strong. So Next to your blending mode, you have an opacity slider, so I'm going to pull it down to about 80%, maybe even a little less actually, maybe 75%, I think. Yeah, that looks good. So there's the before, there's the after. And again, I'm going to mask away a little bit in the middle, because again, I feel like it's affecting the middle of these flowers a little bit too much. Again, I'm keeping my brush at 10% so I can do this very gradually, so there's no harsh lines. Something like that. And I'm really liking how that's looking now, but I think what I'm going to do, just to finish off, I think I might add a little bit of texture to this vase, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So if I go back into my folder, and we'll use texture number 1 again. I'm just going to shrink it down. I'm not too worried about keeping it exact. I really like this texture around the bottom. So I'm going to place it there, and I'm going to change the blending mode, obviously. Now multiply works quite well. I'm just going to quickly cycle through and see if anything looked any better, but I don't think so. That could be quite interesting, but no, I think multiply will work best for this image. So again, I'm going to create an inverted layer mask by holding down Option Alt and clicking the mask icon. And with my white brush at 10%, I'm now just going to tap some of that texture onto the vase area here. It doesn't really matter if you go over the edges a little bit, or adds to the loose painterly feel. But something like that, it's giving that vase a little bit of interest there, because it was looking very white and very bland. Knock it back even more. There we go, something like that. So I think I'm going to leave it there for today. So I hope you found that useful and you have some fun introducing texture into your own images. Don't forget to check the description for your free texture sampler pack, and if you'd like to check out the full texture pack and many more, I'll leave the link in the description for those as well. Thanks so much for your company and happy creating. I'll see you next time.